Gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. On behalf of myself and my co-chair, Joanna Tuffy, you are all very welcome to Dublin Castle for this meeting of Chairpersons of Employment, Enterprise, Innovation and Social Affairs Committees. We hope that you enjoyed dinner yesterday evening, and thank you for your cooperation in arriving here on time this morning. You must have all left and went straight to bed last night. Before we get into the substance of today's meeting, there are a few housekeeping matters that we must attend to. As you know, the theme for today's meeting is strategies to combat youth unemployment and harness the potential of European small and medium enterprises. Each of today's 3 sessions will begin with a presentation from guest speakers, which will be followed by questions from the floor. It is the Chair's intention to begin by allocating 2 minutes for each contribution from the floor. Questions will then be put to the invited speakers in batches of 4 or 5. In order to facilitate the efficient running of the meeting, I request that you complete our request for the floor form, which is in your delegate pack. These are colour-coded. We have the green session for session 1, we have the ivory for session 2, and we have tangerine or orange for the final session. There are additional forms available at the back of the hall on the document table, and it will be very useful if you can use them to fill them in. So some have already done so already, but the green for this session if you want to ask a question. I ask that you, the staff will collect the forms as well and pass them up to the Secretariat. Before we proceed any further, I ask for your attention while we play a brief health and safety announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we please have your attention for this public safety announcement. This is the main conference hall. The conference hall has 3 emergency exits. Exit signs will remain illuminated at all times. Please take a moment to check the exit nearest you, bearing in mind that it may be behind you. In the event of emergency, you will be asked to proceed to the exit and move up the stairs to the assembly point located in the lower castle yard beside the church. For your convenience, restrooms are located outside the main entrance to the room. Please ensure that mobile phones are switched to silent while in the conference hall, and remember that Dublin Castle is a no-smoking building. If you are using headsets, we would request that you return them to where you found them when you have finished. Welcome to Dublin, Ireland, and at its heart, Dublin Castle. For over 800 years, Dublin Castle has been at the centre of Irish political and cultural history. Please take time during your visit to tour around the castle, see Ireland's past in pride of place and memory, and enjoy the breathtaking art, furniture and decor. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your time in Dublin Castle.
Thanks for your cooperation. We now turn our attention to the main items for discussion today. At today's meeting, we will discuss European youth unemployment, as this represents a huge challenge to Ireland and across the Union. The European economy depends on small enterprises to drive growth and with it job creation. We will also explore the potential of European SMEs to provide sustainable growth and jobs during these difficult economic times. In that context, the need to foster European entrepreneurship and enterprise through innovation will also be addressed today. Successful enterprises thrive on the innovation and drive of entrepreneurs. Innovation and entrepreneurship don't just happen. Both must be supported and nurtured in practical terms by providing high-quality, accessible measures to assist them. These aspects of the European economy are intrinsically linked and have all been identified by the Irish Government as priorities for the term of the Irish Presidency. I would like to welcome Mr Laszlo Andor, EU Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, and Ms Joan Burton TD, Irish Government Minister for Social Protection, who will address the issue of European and Irish youth unemployment and the measures being deployed to alleviate unemployment and its effects. Social cohesion in Europe is under great pressure as a result of austerity and social exclusion, so this debate is very timely and very important. Our committee, the Oireachtas Joint Committee on Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, recently published a report on unemployment entitled Creating Policies That Work. Actions to address youth and long-term unemployment. The report contains 35 recommendations. It has been sent to both the EU Commission and the EU Parliament as a political contribution to the debate on youth unemployment. In today's second session, I look forward to welcoming Mr Richard Bruton TD, Irish Government Minister for Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation, who will speak about the potential of European SMEs as growth drivers in the economy. Ms Joanna Drack, European Commission, who will address the issue of European entrepreneurship and plans to invigorate European entrepreneurship. And she will also be followed by a short and engaging visual presentation on inspiring entrepreneurs by Ms Trina Campbell, an Irish entrepreneur. Finally, in our third session today, Mr Wolfgang Burscher, Deputy Director General in European Commission for Research and Innovation, will discuss Horizon 2020, the EU's new programme for research and innovation funding, followed by Dr Imelda Lamkin of Enterprise Ireland, who will inform us of Ireland's experience of programme funding. We will close then with Dr Mazar Barry, an innovator and company director of Solar Print Limited, an Irish SME, which with the help of research funding is leading a successful and innovative business. The opportunity to jointly chair this meeting with my colleague Joanna is greatly valued. Joanne spoke last night about the importance of the role of committee chairs and Parliament members in the whole European presidency and all the decisions being taken during this time. It is very important that we get that chance to engage, to meet with each other, to network and to build professional relationships and working relationships for the future as well. And so I think it's a very useful time today, and I want you to use your time to engage with questions, but also during the breaks to get to know each other better as well and to mix as well. We look forward to an interesting debate and hope that by conducting proceedings in the open and live on the internet and on the local cable television channel, we will provide the citizens we serve with a window into discussions and debates between European parliamentarians, the Presidency of the EU Council and the European Commission. Can I now call on my co-chair, Joanna Tuffy, to open session 1, please?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to join the Chair, Deputy Damien English, in welcoming you here this morning. The topic for session 1 of our meeting this morning is youth unemployment, an EU challenge. As youth unemployment continues to rise across the EU, we must adopt a youth-specific approach to tackle this crisis. Recent statistics have shown that almost 7.5 million people between the ages of 15 to 24 years are neither employed nor in education or training. Furthermore, young people face being unemployed for longer, with on average 30.1% of the young unemployed remaining jobless for more than 12 months. This trend poses a serious risk as more young people become detached from the labour market and from society as a whole. As well as a fiscal response to Europe's current economic problems, a coordinated and social response by the EU and Member States is necessary to ensure that Europe focuses on the critical problem of youth unemployment and its effects. We are very pleased to have Commissioner Andor and Minister Burton here this morning to address us on this issue. Commissioner Andor will provide us with a glimpse of how the European Union intends to tackle this issue, and Minister Burton will provide us with, or will brief us on Ireland's particular response to youth unemployment. I'm now going to call on the Commissioner to make his opening address.
Good morning, honourable members of Parliament. Europe's most valuable resource and its greatest asset are its people. The talent, skills and experience of our workforce, their capacity to invent, innovate and create, their enthusiasm, passion and imagination are all driving forces for our collective prosperity. And among its people, those who hold Europe's future well-being and prosperity in their hands are clearly our youth. But today, young people are paying a high price as a result of the current economic situation, with youth unemployment rates at unprecedented levels. Across the EU, 5.5 million young people under the age of 25 are jobless. Young people are twice as likely to be unemployed as the adult population. They have a 23% unemployment rate in the EU as opposed to the average 11% of the total. In February 2012, action teams were therefore created to help the 8 member states with the highest rates of youth unemployment. By the end of 2012, the youth unemployment rate had declined by 0.8 percentage points in Ireland and by 4.3 percentage points in Lithuania. But it had continued to climb in other member states like Italy and Portugal, with rate around 38%, Greece over 58%, and Spain nearly 56%. In general, great disparities exist between member states, and the gap is widening between what we may loosely call the north and the south, or the centre and the periphery. Our challenge is to jointly address the failures in our labour markets so that those falling behind can catch up with the frontrunners. We simply cannot sit idly by when 14 million young Europeans are neither in employment nor in education or training. We need to improve people's skills and enable them to use their abilities to the full. Consequently, I warmly welcome the positive reaction of policymakers to our initiative for a youth guarantee. Tabled by the Commission last December, Member States agreed on a Council recommendation by late February. This is a record time. Through the youth guarantee, Member States have committed to ensuring that within 4 months of becoming unemployed or leaving formal education, all young people up to the age of 25 receive a quality offer of a job, an apprenticeship or a traineeship, or the opportunity to continue their education or training. The major objective of this guarantee is to ensure smoother transitions from education and unemployment into work. To put this into practice, the recommendation also includes guidelines for setting up new guarantee schemes. In particular, it requires that all concerned engage in strong partnerships. It calls for early intervention and for measures to support integration into the labour market. The Youth Guarantee is designed to help individuals into the labour market, and a personalised approach has characterised the Youth Guarantee schemes of some member states. Measures targeting the individuals include direct support for high-quality internships and apprenticeships, providing first job experience, and reducing non-wage labour costs. Plus, mobility helps to bring skills and jobs together. However, these specific measures are not mandatory. Member States can decide with the Commission on the measures to be used, as the needs of different regions vary significantly. What matters is to implement a youth guarantee scheme and to go ahead with such an important structural reform. Ladies and gentlemen, youth guarantee schemes already exist in some member states, including Finland, Austria, and Sweden. Finland is a good example of a well-functioning scheme. A recent evaluation shows that 83% of young job seekers received a successful intervention within 3 months of registering as unemployed in 2011. The Finnish Youth Guarantee has accelerated the pace at which personalised plans were drawn up. This has resulted in a reduction in unemployment and has led either to employment or further training. In Austria, a training guarantee for young people was put in place in 2008. This gives young people who cannot find a company-based apprenticeship on their own the opportunity to learn an apprenticeship trade at a supra-company training institution. The measure is financed by the Public Employment Services. Apprentices with special needs can benefit from an integrated training scheme involving partial or prolonged apprenticeships. In Sweden, the approach is to stimulate the young unemployed to be active in job seeking. This scheme starts with an initial period of 3 months of intensified support and follow-up of the individual's job-seeking efforts. After this initial period, an active matching process begins, combined with enhanced action, which may be an apprenticeship or further education. Youth guarantees can take many shapes, but success is very much dependent on adapting these to national and local circumstances, whilst also respecting the diversity of young people. The effective implementation of the European Youth Guarantee is what we must now focus on. As national actors and legislators, we urge you to support the reforms needed to implement the Youth Guarantee in your own country. Building on what exists and what works, upscaling of good practices will in many cases suffice. Monitoring and continuous improvement of the schemes will also be necessary. A youth guarantee is outcome-based and will be considered successful in the longer run if young people remain employed. The youth guarantee is not only a Council recommendation, but also one of the main elements of the 2013 Annual Growth Survey, and therefore also part of the European semester. Thus, monitoring will be done on a regular basis under multilateral surveillance with country-specific recommendations being issued to member states where it is appropriate. Therefore, this year's national reform programs and national job plans should include some specific steps towards the implementation of the Youth Guarantee. I encourage you to contribute to this process by organizing hearings on the plans for national Youth Guarantee schemes. At European level, the Commission will help with the exchange of good practices. It will make use of the new programme on social change and innovation and promote mutual learning activities at all levels. We will also make full use of the results of projects supported in the course of the preparatory action on youth guarantee schemes. You might rightly ask about funding. Will member states with serious budgetary constraints be able to implement such a guarantee? EU funding will be available through the European structural funds. The European Council in February decided to support the implementation of the Youth Guarantee by earmarking 6 billion euros for a new youth employment initiative. From 2014, this will be available to regions where youth unemployment exceeds 25%. And in addition to this, there will be a targeted investment priority in the future European Social Fund on sustainable labour market integration of young people not in employment, education or training. We expect all member states with high youth unemployment rates to allocate some of their ESF funding for 2014 to 20 to youth guarantee schemes. However, I would also like to call on national parliaments to prioritise youth in their national budgets to avoid higher costs in the future. Youth guarantee schemes, of course, will need financing, but they will cost much less than doing nothing. The cost of having 14 million young people in the age group 15 to 29, neither in employment nor in education or in training, are estimated to be the equivalent of 1.21% of the EU GDP, and that is a collective annual loss of 153 billion euros to the member states. Ladies and gentlemen, the Youth Guarantee is an investment. Investing in young people's employability is vital in order to preserve our potential for economic growth. The Youth Guarantee will generate a positive return by improving the economic situation, improving the employment rate and the competitiveness of our economy in the long run. In that sense, it should be considered as a top priority on the agenda of structural reforms. The Youth Guarantee is also to be seen as complementary to other measures that tackle the different crisis-related and structural problems behind the youth employment situation. By the end of 2013, we will put forward a proposal related to a quality framework for traineeships. This should ensure that traineeships do not simply replace jobs, but provide young people with high-quality work experience under good conditions. And the Commission will also launch a European Alliance for Apprenticeships in July 2013. Evidence shows that in countries with well-established dual learning systems, the position of young people in the labour market is far better than the EU average. Therefore, a European Alliance for Apprenticeships will help to improve the quality and supply of apprenticeships and promote national partnerships for dual vocational training systems. It is our common responsibility to create better opportunities for young people. The cost of not doing so would be exorbitantly high in human as well as economic terms. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Commissioner Andor. Can I now call on our second speaker, Minister John Burton.
Good morning, delegates, chairs, members of the parliaments, members of the European Parliament. I want to very warmly welcome you to Dublin, which I have the honour to represent one of the constituencies in Dublin. You notice we arranged some very nice weather, and I hope you enjoy your visit to the city. You're in a very historic spot. This was the castle from which the English oversaw the rule of Ireland for about 800 years. And in the courtyard you walked through this morning in 1922, that's where the British marched out and the independent Irish state and the Irish army under the leadership of Michael Collins walked in. So even the stones around the castle are very historic. I chaired the EBSCO Council on February the 28th last, and I think it's fair to say that youth unemployment was uppermost in the ministers' minds. Because although some countries, such as Ireland and other countries in programmes, are experiencing extreme difficulties, nonetheless, very many countries in Europe have this serious problem of lack of participation in the economy of the country of an alarming number of young people. So at that council meeting, as the Commissioner has said, there was an agreement on the council recommendation on a youth guarantee. And I'm pleased to say that following review by the Council's legal and linguistic experts, the recommendation establishing a youth guarantee was formally adopted by the Council just last week on April 22nd. Youth unemployment is at crisis levels in Europe, and the European Foundation, Eurofound, based here in Dublin, has estimated that as costing something like 1.2% of GDP, or more than 150 billion of euros throughout the European Union. Adoption of the recommendation on an EU-wide youth guarantee, it's one of the crucial first steps in tackling the crisis. Implementation of the guarantee will take time, and it will pose a range of challenges for the individual member states. So while member states are encouraged to implement the recommendations as soon as possible, it is recognised that implementation may be more gradual in countries with higher levels of youth unemployment and particularly severe budgetary problems. However, once implemented, the guarantee will assure young people under the age of 25 a good quality offer of employment, continued education, an apprenticeship or a traineeship within 4 months of becoming unemployed. It will contribute to 3 out of the 5 Europe 2020 targets. It will increase the employment rate. It will reduce the extent of early school leaving. And thirdly, it will lift people out of poverty and social inclusion. I want to just give you some indication of the scale of the problem that we face here in Ireland. In 2012, on average, the under 25 age group had an unemployment rate of 30%, as compared with an unemployment rate of 13.5% for prime age workers aged 25 to 54. And I think that's mirrored across a lot of European countries, where the under 25 unemployment rate is roughly double the rate for older workers. So that's why in some countries where the general unemployment rate has gone above 25%, the youth unemployment rate can be as high as 50%. And it is hard to envisage the founding fathers of the European Union actually, if you like, seeing a Europe with young people unemployed at these extraordinarily high rates as being part of the vision of what inspired the establishment of the European Union. This is increasing, particularly, I think the people we need to be very concerned about are the young people who are becoming unemployed for more than 1 year, or indeed in some countries, young people who never get to take part in the labour market at all. In other words, they never even get a serious first job. And given all of the collective experience of the people in the room here, can you imagine what you were like, or what any of us were like on our first day in our first job? It's one of those steps in learning that we have to make sure that all of our young people have that opportunity. Because if you never get a chance to have a job, your prospects are indeed very restricted. In Ireland, we have a high number of young people now becoming unemployed for longer periods. At the same time, as the Commissioner said, the overall rate of youth unemployment has fallen somewhat, and in Ireland we have a very high participation rate in both further education and in college education, and that includes huge numbers of young people. So in many ways it's the young people who leave school early, the young people who perhaps enter a college or a further education course and then drop out. They're the people who are the ones who are most at risk. And also in Ireland, because of the construction crash, we had a lot of young people who could leave school, get well-paid jobs, hard-working jobs in building and construction. And since building and construction collapsed, those particular young people really don't have much alternative. So the government's primary strategy to tackle youth unemployment is to create the environment for a strong economic recovery by promoting competitiveness and productivity, and that economic recovery will underpin jobs growth, most notably for young people. And in addition then to promoting economic recovery, the government is undertaking a series of structural measures to support the young unemployed and keep job seekers close to the labour market, or to use President Obama's phrase, to help people to become job ready, so that when jobs become available, that young people and other unemployed people are ready and able to take those jobs. So we have 5 main approaches in relation to youth unemployment: job search, assistance and guidance, education, training, work experience, and fifthly, encouraging job creation. So, for instance, we had about 25,000 young people registered for job search and assistance with our employment services in 2012. That was about 36% of all the people who registered for job services and assistance. That means that people who do that get access to guidance interviews and to specific search, and in some cases one-to-one assistance with the caseworker, links with employers who have vacancies to help them into a job. Secondly, my department, the Department of Social Protection, we have a back to education allowance which provides income maintenance for somebody who's unemployed who returns to higher education. In other words, people get to keep their social welfare payment, and their college and course fees are free if they return to higher education. And we have about 6,500 young people under 25 in the Back to Education scheme. We have about 12,000 people then training on various courses with FOSS, our state training agency. And I established 2 years ago here a national internship scheme which provides work experience placements for 6 months or 9 months with employers who offer to host the internships. That's not age restricted. It's open to people of any age. We have had so far about 16,000 people take part in this in the first year and a half of the scheme. And of those, about 1,500 have been in the under 25 age group. We are finding the numbers of people who subsequently get some work as a consequence of that is running at about 50 to 60%. So it's actually giving people who for some reason have come into a labour market where they can't get work an opportunity to get a work experience. And in fact the experience is that particularly in the SME sector they are being hired for subsequent work. We have a number of schemes which give incentives to employers if they take people from the live register. We have a revised scheme coming out in July called Jobs Plus, where in relation to somebody on a lowish wage, we will basically pay, in terms of the labour costs, the state will subsidise about €1 out of every €4 of labour costs through remission of social insurance payments. In other words, giving the employer a holiday from the employer's social insurance contribution for up to 2 years. These efforts overall provide support to a significant number of young people when seen in the context of a youth employment total of about 59,000. In the 2013 budget, we also set aside funding for an additional 10,000 places across a large range of employment programmes. And we expect that about a quarter of these places will be taken up by young unemployed people. But we have a long way to go. And one of the things that I'm anxious to promote is that we look upon, if you like, the spending in relation to young people as an investment, not just in their future, but in the country's future, but that we also develop a concept of participation. That, in other words, if the labour market is difficult for a lot of people, which it is at the moment, that we actually have other avenues of participation in the economy. So, for instance, in my department, we run a whole series of community employment schemes where if somebody is on a social welfare payment, they can work for roughly 20 hours a week with a local community-based initiative. And it could be with community organisations, it could be with organisations like environmental organisations and so on. And it allows them to participate, it allows them to give something back, and most importantly, right around the country, including in the western parts of the country, it allows people to participate in their own community and contribute to their own community. Another issue which I want to mention is that side by side with this issue of youth unemployment in Ireland, we have areas where there are a lot of job vacancies, so there can be something of a mismatch. We have a lot of foreign direct investment coming to Ireland, particularly social media like Google and Facebook. Now, in many cases, they're recruiting because of the requirement of local language skills, people right across Europe. But nonetheless, there is an absolute shortage of IT professionals at various levels. One of the things we're doing in terms of our education system is we're putting a lot of emphasis on the further development of mathematics, science and computers in terms of education. And we simply don't have enough people as we speak in Ireland to fill all of the vacancies in this areas. So going back to the internship scheme, we are developing a number of models of people, say for instance, who are construction engineers, and the employment in construction just isn't there at the moment because of the economic collapse in Ireland. To convert people like that to IT, whether that's programmers or software designers, or people specialising in various elements of social media. And the numbers there are small, but it offers very, very significant employment, which is well paid. And I think broadly throughout Europe, this is an area where the skills required are in short supply. So just talking about the measures needed to implement the guarantee, I do hope that agreement will be reached between the Parliament and the Commission and the Presidency in relation to the budgetary framework. It's included in the multi-annual financial framework. It provides an initial funding indication of €6 billion for youth unemployment measures across the 20 member states, the 27 member states, over the 7-year period from 2014 to 2020. One of the initiatives that's been examined is the question of front-loading the initiative to regions or countries where the level of youth unemployment is particularly high, where the level of youth unemployment is more than 25%, and of allowing a series of front-loading measures there. I think that that's a very good idea, because I think allowing a demonstration which shows young people being activated will provide, I think, a lot of hope that it is possible, even in the current economic difficulty, to get people back to work. Other measures that we're looking at here in Ireland is the development not just of internships, but of longer-term 2-year traineeships based on some of the positive experiences of colleagues in Finland, Austria and Germany. I think that's a model which is very positive. Just to conclude by saying that we have a lot of challenges to meet here in Ireland, but if we have a strong programme of investment in this area, I believe we can get a lot of young people back to work. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Minister Burton. I'm now going to take questions in batches of 5 from the floor, and each speaker will have about 2 minutes. Okay, and just as well, just to say, to keep it insofar as possible to a question. Okay. All right. The first question is from Sweden, and the speaker. Oh, Cyprus. Okay. Okay. All right, and it's Mr. Andreas Vakontas. Okay. Okay, Mr. Vakontas.
Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate the Irish Presidency for its initiative to organize this conference on such a crucial matter. We are all facing the consequences of an unprecedented systemic debt crisis which threatens the Eurozone. The strict austerity measures imposed by the Troika on the southern European countries aggravate the situation and undermine the strategy Europe 2020. Cyprus is witnessing the dramatic consequences of the debt crisis due to a large extent to the European Council's decisions of October 2011 for the impairment of the Greek debt without any provision for the production of Cyprus banks. Furthermore, the unprecedented decisions of the Eurogroup on 15th and 25th March 2013 treated Cyprus as an experimental guinea pig for testing the economic theory of enforcing a haircut on bank deposits. It is evident that the one-sided austerity measures imposed by the Troika will lead the Cyprus economy to a vicious circle of recession, to the dissolution of the Cyprus financial and banking system, closing down of business, mass poverty and social exclusion, and to dramatic unemployment rates. In Cyprus, youth unemployment rate is currently 31.8%, while forecasts indicate an upward trend that will exacerbate the problem. This situation has raised serious concerns among the Cyprus people and the political leadership concerning the Troika package of measures and whether to remain in the Eurozone if these measures are not coupled by tangible support and solidarity from our European partners in order to restart our economy. Our efforts alone will not be enough in view of the extent of the crisis. I seize this opportunity to call on EU institutions to affirm their solidarity to Cyprus and to translate their solidarity into tangible support to target and channel the allocation of financial resources which are available through the Youth Guarantee Scheme, the European Social Fund and the European Structural Funds into concrete programs that deliver jobs to young people in Cyprus and to facilitate economic recovery and stability. I urge the European Commission to mobilize all available instruments and funds to assist Cyprus and other member states facing high youth unemployment rates so as to implement their active labour strategies.
Mr. Vakontas, I'm going to ask you to conclude now. If you can conclude.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker is from Sweden, Ms. Savant Esson, who is the chairperson of the labour market in Sweden. Parliament.
Thank you, Chair. Youth unemployment is indeed one of Europe's greatest challenges. In the wake of the financial crisis, which has had a severe impact on youth unemployment, it's even more important to take forceful measures. Therefore, Sweden welcomed the European Commission Youth Initiative. It is a good example on how the EU can support regions where youth unemployment is high. Even in Sweden, we struggle with high unemployment among youth. Fortunately, we are among those countries with the shortest unemployment duration. Still, every single unemployed youth is one too many, and thus we have launched a vast array of initiatives in order to combat youth unemployment. One important measure, as Commissioner Andor told you earlier, is our guarantee for young people that was introduced in 2007. Another important measure has been lowering employers' cost for employing young people. We have lowered employers' contribution for young people, both in generally as well as aimed at youth who have been unemployed for some time. But in spite of these measures, Sweden has a lot to learn from other countries. Several other countries have very positive experience of apprenticeships programs, for example. Therefore, the Swedish government is right now discussing how it can support vocational introduction agreements between the social parties in Sweden. I believe that we all can learn from each other on how to combat youth unemployment. Therefore, I look forward to further exchanging ideas and experience with you during this session. And I have a question to Commissioner Andor, and that is how the Commissioner have felt the response of the initiative that the Commission has taken on the guarantee in the national and the government, the parliaments and among the governments. How do you feel the response, and is there a good chance that we all can be a part of this? Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Surrogates from Austria.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for the invitation, the hospitality, the beautiful organization, and the wonderful evening last night. Thank you very much. The fight against youth unemployment is one of the priorities. Young people without proper training and without job feel that there is no future for them. Sometimes they leave their home countries and settle abroad. Sometimes they take the streets and demonstrate, and sometimes they drift to the right. It is true that what they need first of all is proper training. In Austria, apprenticeship training is well organized and works very well. More than 80% of apprentices are trained in SMEs. There is also an option for several SMEs to form a group, and as a group, they will get support from the Labour Market Service for the training for their apprentices. It is for policymakers and the business community to ensure that young people can put to use what they have learned. It goes without saying that this is something that needs to take place also in a European level. There is no doubt that investments are needed, but it is money well spent. It's investment in the future of Europe. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Mr. Grad from Poland.
Thank you very much, dear chairpersons, Mr. Commissioner, distinguished guests, friends. For the past 9 years, Poland has been successfully using the European funds. Step by step, we improve our instruments and procedures in order to use the EU funds more effectively. EU funds are extremely helpful in combating unemployment, especially the European social funds. Therefore, I would like to ask Mr. Commissioner what kind of changes and activities are the European Commission planning to introduce to European funds in order to ensure high effectiveness of their use to combat youth unemployment in the new perspective, financial perspective. And do you, as a Commissioner for the Employment and Social Affairs, cooperate on this area with Commissioner for Regional Policy and coordinate those processes with national governments? I also would like to thank Ms. Joanna Taffy and Mr. Damien English for organizing today's meeting and the splendid cultural event yesterday. Thank you very much.
Okay, the final speaker in this batch is Ms. Zimmermann from Germany.
Ja, danke schön, sehr geehrte Kolleginnen
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Colleagues, Dear friends, I too would like to start by thanking you for yesterday evening. It was hugely impressive, especially the cultural event, but the whole way in which this event was organized. And I have to say, I think it's very important that we meet here together in order to exchange experience of how the actual situation is in our different countries, because I'm not sure that we're always aware of that fully. We're very grateful for this idea of a youth employment pact. I think it's very significant that young people should have a future. Commissioner Anders said that it's an investment in the future, and that is something that I fully agree with. We've had very good experience in Germany with the dual training system. We have a system in Germany whereby you have a contract which links you to a given company. And I think that's an important part of this in helping to ensure that the youth unemployment levels are not too high in Germany. Now, we have the problem in Germany that a lot of young people don't conclude their training or haven't completed their education, and education and training are vital to their future. So here we're working on programs whereby it's possible to give these young people a future and get them into the market. And I think that's the most important here when we look at this youth employment package, bringing youth to the companies, internships, qualifications, bridges to jobs, whereby older people function as mentors for younger people so that they can transmit their experience. I think this youth employment package has to have life breathed into it, and I think if by so doing we will be able to get a grip on this problem. Thank you.
Okay. I'll now go to our two speakers to respond to the question. So starting with Mr. Ander.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Although it is not a question but more a statement, I would not like to avoid a short reaction on the question of the financial crisis and its impact, particularly in the southern European countries, including Cyprus. Of course, particularly in the last 3 years, the rise of youth unemployment is strongly linked to the so-called Eurozone crisis and the way it has been handled. In fact, if you want to analyze the dynamics of unemployment and particularly youth unemployment in the last 5 or 6 years, it's important to distinguish between the early phase of the crisis, where the growth of youth unemployment primarily came from countries like Spain or Ireland, or the Baltic countries, the so-called bubble economies, after they deflated and less protected young people were very quickly thrown out of jobs which had very often a temporary nature as opposed to proper fixed-term jobs. But the second phase, the last two and a half years, is very strongly linked with the euro area crisis, where the sharp rise of youth unemployment came from countries like Greece, Portugal, and other countries where the crisis kicked in a very harsh way, and the adjustment was extremely speedy. Certainly the way to handle the crisis, particularly the reference was made to the trial and error approach of the Euro group. Of course, this is very far from ideal, and I fully agree that for the next period, if we really want to recover, we need a lot more support and solidarity. The Commission recently discussed the situation in Cyprus, and the discussion was focusing on establishing a kind of support group which would include a number of portfolios, including the regional portfolio and the social portfolio, to mobilize all the available funds for preserving or creating jobs, helping the change of the business model towards a more sustainable one. I'm grateful for the question from Sweden because it allows for a little reflection on the history of the discussions in the last few years. And I would need to underline that, in fact, the first reference from the Commission to the Youth Guarantee came as early as 2010, when the Europe 2020 strategy was launched. And at the time of the Hungarian presidency, there was already a very good discussion staged by the presidency about youth unemployment. But the atmosphere was quite different than now, because in early 2011, there was still an expectation of a relatively rapid recovery from the crisis. There was less sense of urgency and less understanding of a need for entirely new types of measures and new approaches. And this had already changed. This had already changed by the time of the Danish presidency, when informally there were more discussions and more focused discussions on the youth guarantee. And at the same time, some ministers, some countries like Austria, for example, started to look for the resources. So all this process was necessary.